Hello and welcome to the fourth Cumbernauld Academy podcast. I am your co-host Rachel Alexander, and today I am joined by Tom Wondrum and Max Walker.
Hi.
Hello.
And we're going to be interviewing Andrew Reid from Abertay University. He has a PhD in applied game design and is now a lecturer in games production. So how are you this morning?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So how have you come to be a lecturer in games production?
So to go back to sort of 2011, when I was leaving Abernhill High School, as it was then, I was applying for various universities in game development across programming, art and design, and game design specifically, which is where I ended up. So I got a placement at Abertay University, and I studied there between 2011 and 2015. Where I got my undergraduate in game design and production management. And at that point, I was at a crossroads with whether I wanted to go into industry and be a game designer for various companies that had opportunities to work for, and or to go into academia to continue my study. So I got an opportunity to study a PhD in applied game design at Glasgow Caledonian University, and it was a 3-year funded position, and I completed that in 2.5 years. So in July 2018, I was offered a job at Abertay to teach on the course that I had graduated on 3 years previously. So it sort of came full circle.
Awesome.
All right. So, Andrew, did you always know that that's the sort of field that you wanted to go into work?
I always knew that I wanted to work in games in some capacity. I wasn't quite sure with what respect I wanted to work in games, whether it was as a designer, a programmer, or an artist. I had picked my subjects at school to try and give myself a broad opportunity. So I did things like art and design, information systems, which is the computing course. We didn't necessarily have a computing course back then. It was all about databases and web design, but it was the closest thing related to programming that we could choose. I did my advanced higher mathematics.
All right.
There was maybe only 4 or 5 of us in that class.
Wow.
At that time. And I managed to get a good grade for that. But really, when it came down to choosing what subjects that I wanted to do at university, game design gave me that opportunity to explore all of these different disciplines. So at Abertay, the game design and production management course allowed you to do a little bit of art and do a little bit of programming, audio design, game design obviously, and managing projects as well. And by the 3rd year of my university, I knew exactly that game design was the right choice for me. And again, by 4th year, it was deciding whether to take that game design knowledge and put it into industry, or put it into academia and help the next generation of game designers.
Brilliant. Good choice.
Thank you. It's worked out okay.
Yeah.
Going a bit further into that, what topics do you actually teach at the university?
So I teach across all 4 years, and a module. We call them modules, where you might call subjects in school. So for the 1st year module, I teach quality assurance and user experience, which is about designing with an end user in mind, and also being able to test games. So we take a lot of games and we break them, essentially. We try and find all the bugs. In 2nd year, we take those principles that we learn and apply them to user interfaces, and trying to design interfaces, menu systems and things like that for games. In 3rd year, I supervise group projects. So we work with clients, usually games companies, and also companies not associated with games, to develop a game based on a brief that they've submitted. So last year, for example, we worked with a children's hospice who were looking for a game to be put into their hospice care. and we made a simulation of the Paralympic sport Boca. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a bit like bowls.
I think I've seen something about that.
Yeah, it's a fun sport. Honestly, you should try it. But we've now got the digital simulation of that as well, available online to download as well. And in fourth year, I teach professional practice, so how to get a foot into the industry, how to prepare yourself, how to prepare your portfolios and CVs ready for applying to jobs in the industry.
That's very interesting. And what would you say is the part of the job you enjoy the most, or what's would you say is the best part of your job?
Gosh, it's like picking your favourite child. Honestly, there's so much about my job that I love. As much as it's very stressful and very hard work, and you can go home and feel a bit down about yourself about the work that you do, I wouldn't change any of it. I enjoy interacting with students and seeing them progress and develop over a 4-year span. I enjoy the research aspect of my work and investigating different elements of games and how they can give us a better sense of the world that we live in. I enjoy talking to the public and coming to schools as a STEM ambassador and spreading the word about the good in games, because there's a lot of hysteria around the negative aspects of games at the moment. I feel like they are justified, but there's also this other conversation that's not being had at the moment about
good that games can do.
Exactly.
It's not always just violence.
It's not always violent. It's not always addictive, or these terms that come up and people latch onto. The conversations are worth having, but at the same time, we should also be having all these other conversations where games feed into learning and education, training and simulation, healthcare, and palliative care, which is what we've been working with over the last year. So these are the aspects that I love, the most. As much as they're stressful, I wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah. So you've answered this a little bit, but you must know a lot about many aspects of game production. So do you have any particular areas of interest, like as you said, the Boca Championships or disability and physiotherapy, stuff like that?
So I'm really interested at the moment about inclusivity and accessibility design. With games, traditionally, games are developed with traditional inputs in mind, so keyboard and mouse for PC games, or your traditional sort of controllers for your game-specific platforms. I'm really interested in trying to think of games or playful systems that use different types of input. So the one thing at the moment that I'm really interested in looking at is the Xbox adaptive controller. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's essentially an Xbox controller that's been taken apart and redesigned as a sort of a rectangular box with larger buttons and the opportunity to put different inputs into the controller. So you can play a game controlling your voice, for example, if you plug in a microphone, for those that might not have sort of motor functions for their hands. So that's the sort of things that I'm interested in at the moment. I think that there's a growing potential and a growing market for experiences that sort of expand the palette of games that are currently available.
What about VR?
VR is a really interesting one because it comes in cycles. When I was at school, VR was just emerging as well, and it was going to be the next big thing, and then it sort of disappeared for a couple of years. I think we're getting closer to VR becoming a commercial product. I think that's what's holding it back at the moment. VR technologies are quite expensive, and the ones that are cheaper, your Google Cardboards or your Samsung Gears, they're not exactly the most optimized for games specifically. They're more for
like the experience of VR rather than the actual to be able to do anything in it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not bespoke game products at the moment, until the cost of manufacturing and selling to the consumer goes down, I think VR will still sort of struggle. But what we are seeing is that VR is very useful to the applied games context like you said, that I got my PhD in. Using VR in healthcare to simulate surgery, for example, is a really good example of how it's being used in a real world sense to train trainee surgeons.
So interesting.
What would you say is like the future of games design look like in Scotland? Where it will be going in the next few years?
Wow. That's a really good question, a really difficult question to give like a pinpoint answer, because there's so much going on at the moment, and particularly where I work in Dundee. Dundee has become such a different city to what it was when I started university. And even if you ask your parents about what Dundee was like and years gone by, they will have a different perspective to what it is now. Dundee is a bustling cultural city, and I think that's starting to permeate across the rest of Scotland. Not saying that the other cities like Glasgow or Edinburgh aren't cultural, but that's becoming the focus of the impact of what games have had on society. They are cultural artefacts. They are to be enjoyed in the same way as how we would enjoy a film or listen to music, and not think about the hysteria surrounding certain lyrics in a song, for example. Games are just part of everyday society. 1 in 4 people in the world play games. That's about 2.2 to 2.6 billion people. It's far more common now than it ever has been, and they're being embedded into everyday life, everyday society, people's jobs, people's pastimes. And it's a designer's task then to think about where to insert games into people's lives from we would call it user-centered design, where you think about the end user and try and design an experience that they're more likely to pick up and play than perhaps going to the cinema to watch a film or going out to a restaurant or whatever. They would rather play your game.
That's very interesting.
Awesome. Last question. So, do you have any advice for students wanting to go into games production and to a great extent, like just leaving school?
I think first and foremost, don't panic if you don't know what you want to do. Right, you're still young. There's still a lot of life ahead of you to figure out what it is that you want to do. I think if you are set on going into games specifically, first of all, people talk about certain subjects that you need at school, and there are certain requirements for programming and for art. That's your maths and art and design subjects respectively. For game design, being able to show that you can communicate well, so English or any literacy subject, so history, for example, those are really good to have, because a lot of the time you're communicating what it is that you want to design in a written or oral sense. But generally, having a broad interest in different subjects is more than enough. I've been speaking today to some of your classes and some of your colleagues about how games apply to the subjects that you're learning in school. So just had a chat with your physics department about the science behind games and things like force and momentum, electricity and space, and how those are incorporated into games. Those aren't prerequisites for any course in game design, but they definitely apply to designing meaningful and enjoyable experiences when it comes to game design. So I think if you're interested in studying games, just have a general interest in the world around you. That's all there is.
That's really good. Thanks for coming in, Andrew.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
In other news, yesterday was our Purple for Polio Day. We had a couple of events going on in the school, especially purple nail painting at break and lunch. We also had a bake sale, and how much berry should probably be coming in shortly. And next week is our Halloween disco on Wednesday the 30th of October. So look forward to that. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.